for marriage. And here the idea is the concept or the principle of marriage. Okay, it's not being your marriage or his marriage or her marriage, it's marriage in general. Let marriage, then we have another ellipsis, be held as. And those three words, be held as, is elliptical. And they're in pairs with 3 lines. Or 1 line. Boy, 3 lines. Pairs with 1 line. Sometimes I actually ought to listen to what's coming out of my mouth, right? Let marriage be held as, and then underlined we have precious, slant, honorable. We start with the absolute ellipsis. It's required because of the imperative verb. And then we have the masculine predicate nominative singular of the adjective timios, T-I-M-I-O-S, timios. And timios means precious or valuable. And then it's extended to mean held in honor, to be esteemed or respected. It's the equivalent of the Hebrew yachar, meaning precious and wonderful. Okay? So the idea is that it is supposed to be very precious. It is something that is entered, okay, with a lot of forethought, okay, and it's something that is supposed to be held precious, okay. It should be recognized as something in society that is precious. It should be honored and respected by all members of the human race, okay. And the idea is that it was designed by God as a form of protection in time, and it was designed for all mankind to understand it. So society is supposed to hold it precious, and you saw what our society did to it. Okay, it did not hold it precious. It redefined it and turned it into something that now has despicable components to it. There is no longer any of the protection that was associated with it. So it was funny. We were talking the other day. It's interesting around my house and the conversations we have at the dinner table. Let me put it that way. But we were talking the other day about how reversed things have become. And now, as Christians, you've got to be in the closet as opposed to the way it used to be in society, where the homosexuals were in the closet, okay, and the Christians were actually out front, okay, Christianity, and it's quite frankly our own fault to some extent, okay, we did not function properly with respect to what we knew was right. We did not make sure that we prayed for our national leaders and that we elected individuals that would fight for our rights, that would make sure that we held marriage as precious. We allowed society to say that it was okay to have these things happen. So it's our own fault to some extent. Maybe not yours and mine, but you know what I mean. Okay, be held as precious, slant, honorable by all. Notice it doesn't say by means, I mean by some or anything like that. It means by all. And basically here the idea is by all mankind. Excuse me. And remember, this is for marriage is for a believer and unbeliever as well. Right man, right woman was for believer and unbeliever, so is marriage. Therefore, it's by all, not just by all believers, it's by all mankind. Okay? Be held as precious by all, and we have Kai. Then we have another ellipsis, let. Now here we have the writer of the book of Hebrews, going to get pretty detailed. The marriage bed. B, and B is elliptical. So, undefiled. So let the marriage bed be undefiled, semicolon. And here we have the nominative singular of the feminine noun koite, K-O-I-T long E, koite, which means bed. And more specifically, it means marriage bed. And you can see that it's the root for our English word, okay? And so koite is a polite way of talking about sexual intercourse. When you talk about the marriage bed, okay? They're talking about coitus, koite, right? Extended specifically to mean the marriage bed. And here it's talking about the sexual activity that takes place between a couple, okay, on that marriage bed. And then we have the masculine predicate nominative of the anarthrous adjective, a myantos. That's A-M-I-A-N-T-O-S. The alpha primitive negative. Myantos. M-I-A-N-T-O-S. Myantos. And here it means basically undefiled or pure. Associated with miaino, right? Miaino means defiled, and here we have essentially miaino, it's myantos, but the idea is not defiled, okay? To be pure. In other words, this has nothing to do with letting the sheets get dirty or having a soiled bed, okay? We're not talking literally here, folks, in case you can't figure it out yourself, okay? We're talking about figuratively. And of course, the only way that it can be violated is to have sexual activity between individuals other than the married ones, okay? So the writer of the book of Hebrews here, who remember we don't really know who that is, it addresses both the principle and the reality, the strategy and the tactics of marriage, okay? And now we're going to have something that tells us that you're not going to get away with defiling the marriage bed. We have for, gar, it's the postpositive conjunction, gar, and it's used to introduce the justification for the previous command. And it's going to give us the reason why this should be the case. For the God that, of course, is the nominative masculine singular of the articular noun theos, meaning God with essence on God. For the God shall judge not will judge, it's shall judge. We have emphasis here. Okay, we have krino, K-R-I-N-O, krino, which we've seen before, means to be to separate or distinguish, and then it comes to mean to judge. It means to condemn. It's extended to mean to judge, to condemn, or to hand over for judicial punishment. This refers both to divine discipline for the believer as well as punishment for the unbeliever. And the idea here is what we call a predictive future. The predictive future is that this is going to happen. You do the defiling, this is going to happen. The God shall judge, and then underlined we have fornicators and adulterers, period. Wow. Start with the accusative plural of the anarthrous masculine noun, pornos, P-O-R-N-O-S, pornos. And pornos means actually a male prostitute, and then it's extended to mean a fornicator, one who practices sexual immorality. And here, it refers to the activity on the part of a single individual. In other words, what it's talking about, fornicators, when it's talking about fornicators, it's talking about individuals who are not married, okay, having sexual relationships. And so the idea is that you are not to have relationships, not to have sex before marriage. Otherwise, you're a fornicator, okay? And so it makes a very clear distinction. Fornicator and of course we have kai. And then we have the accusative singular of the anarthrous masculine noun, moikos. That's adulterers. M-O-I-C-H-O-S, moikos. Even sounds like a bad word. Me, anyway. Moikos, it means adulterer, one who breaks the marriage vows in the sexual area. Boy. The idea here is a married person having illicit sex with another married person, or a single individual having sex with a married person. Okay? And together with two, you actually have all the things. A single person with a single person, a married person with a single person, a single person with a married person, and a married person with a married person. Okay? And the only biblical authorized environment then for the sexual activity is that which occurs between a husband and a wife. So it's called the marriage bed. It's not called the sex trampoline. Okay? The idea is that it is only supposed to be the environment for a married man with his wife as a married woman. Okay? So, all together, says, Hebrews 13:4, for let marriage be held as precious / honorable by all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for thee God shall judge fornicators and adulterers. And again, this figurative, okay, it doesn't give you an excuse to say, oh, well, okay, we're going to go to a hotel, okay, or we're going to go park somewhere, or we're going to go do whatever. We're not going to do it in the marriage bed. The idea is the whole figurative concept of sex, not just the physical marriage bed. Okay, so that's the idea. You're not being able to avoid it by location. Okay, in case you don't quite get an analogy. Okay, so or figurative speech. So subpoint F. Marriage as divine institution number 2. Both authorizes and requires the nation to make and enforce laws that protect the right man, right woman relationship, once that relationship has been recognized and accepted, period. This includes both the responsibility and authority relationships that are commanded by God and defined by God for the right man, right woman relationship. Subpoint 1. In other words, the responsibility that the right man has the responsibility that the right man has to protect and provide for the right woman and the authority to make that responsibility a reality must also be extended into the marriage relationship. So the national entity, in putting together laws, are supposed to make laws that enforce, reinforce, and support that function. The function of the right man to be able to provide for and protect the right woman. Okay? That means that things such as, someone coming in and trying to steal your wife away, the state is supposed to protect that from happening. Okay? Continue the point. Point two, excuse me. Point two. This means that the basic laws of the national entity are to be based on the laws of divine establishment regarding marriage, it must recognize the husband's responsibilities and the fact that the husband is the final authority in the marriage relationship. Period. There's lots of different concepts associated with that. For example, in today's day and age, that's not necessarily enforced. And so, you could conceive that if a husband and wife are married and the husband makes a decision to do something and it turns out to be a bad decision, the wife could take the husband to court and sue him. Right? You can envision that as happening because of the way our screwed up system is. That's not the biblical case. The biblical case is it's the husband's responsibility, and he has to take responsibility for that bad decision. But his wife has to go with and understand and say yes, sir, to the decisions that he makes. Again, a husband, smart husband will listen to his wife, particularly if he has a very, very smart wife, okay, who has a very good logic sense. He will use that to inform his decisions before he makes his decision. He doesn't just do it in a vacuum. And he'll make much better decisions if he listens. But when it comes down to it, he is the authority. And as the authority, he has to make a decision. And it's his responsibility to do so. And the nation should uphold that. Okay? So point 3. This also includes the very important fact that in a properly functioning national entity, where the biblical concept of right man, right woman is recognized and enforced, The husband is the one who is to be held responsible by the state for the proper function of both parties in the national entity. So when the husband acts, the husband is acting for both entities. The husband is the final authority. The converse of that is that the woman's not supposed to be able to act for both authorities. I mean, for both entities, because she doesn't have the authority to do so. Okay? Unless the husband has given her the right to do so. See, a husband can say, you know, hon, for this thing, he can delegate. That's part of being an authority, right? He can delegate some of his authority and responsibility to his wife. When it comes to such and such, I would like you to handle that. If you got any questions, ask. Otherwise, I'm giving you the authority to handle it. Now, he's still responsible for the decision she makes. It's like Jack used to, you know, emphasize in the Navy, right? When you got the captain of the ship, even though he may be in his berth, asleep, when the coxswain runs the ship aground, it's still the captain's responsibility. It's still his fault. It was his responsibility to train the guy how to read navigational charts and not run aground. Obviously, he didn't do a good enough job. The guy ran aground, and it's his fault. It doesn't matter what happens on board that ship. It's his fault. You know, when the Cole got attacked, the USS Cole a long time ago, when the Cole got attacked by terrorists, the captain let, you know, the people had let a boat get too close to our ship, and they were managed to damage the ship. Okay, it was the captain's fault. He should have had enough guts and the responsibility to have his men fire on that ship, fire on that boat, and take it out before it got too close. You give them the warning, they get too close, you shoot them out of the water. But probably being trained or being surrounded by entirely liberal force, right? You know, decided, well, we'll give them a chance, we'll give them a break. What can they do? They're in a little boat. Yeah, well, they damaged the ship, you know, very, very badly, and people were killed. But and that goes down throughout history, right? It's the captain's fault. Well, in the marriage relationship, you are the captain of your marriage, men. And like it or not, it's your fault. So you have the responsibility, okay, but you have the authority. And that's why the wife is supposed to say yes and not go tugging in the other direction. Okay? Because he's going to be held accountable. But like I said, just like anything else, he has the opportunity to delegate, but he can't delegate responsibility, ultimate responsibility. He can delegate authority for responsibility of certain things. He can say, you know, I want you to do this. You know, when it comes to finances, for example, sometimes the woman is much, much smarter than the man in finance. Okay, and he'll say, you know what, I'll let you take care of the finances. It's not a proper choice, by the way, but he can do it. But if they end up bankrupt, it's his fault. Okay. So anyway, includes a very important fact that in properly functioning national entity, subpoint 3 again, where the biblical concept of right man, right woman is recognized and enforced, the husband is the one who's held responsible by the state for the proper function of both parties in the national entity. Subpoint 4, without marriage, and the official recognition of marriage by the state, and without the protective laws related to it, the right man, right woman relationship would always be in danger from encroachment by other members of the human race who are evilly motivated. See, there's subtleties in the lessons that are taught in the Bible that many people don't stop and think about logically. But the concept that it's the man's fault is very well taught when you think about Adam and Eve, Ish and Isha, okay? God being omnipotent, being omniscient, okay, could very well have caused the fall of mankind when Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It could have been, okay, that's it. Okay, mankind is now fallen. And he could have come up with another way for passing down the old sin nature. He could have made it pass from the woman to the child. Okay? I mean, there's all kinds of things he could have done. But he didn't. We don't play what if history. He didn't. Mankind as mankind did not fall until Adam ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He gave his authority over to the woman. She took the thing. She said, here, you eat. And he said, okay. And he ate. He misused his authority. He misused his authority over the woman. He could have said, no, you don't tell me what to do. You made a bad decision. Get thee away from me. Okay. But he didn't. He ate. Okay. And so the whole fall of mankind was his fault. Okay. The one in authority was his fault. It comes down from him. Like I said, God could have made it her. He didn't. We have the whole concept of responsibility and authority right there in a nice, neat little package. From, by the way, despite what people want to say, history. Adam and Eve is not an allegory or a fairy tale or something that, you know, is trying to teach us something by giving us a fanciful fairy tale. It's history. People want to argue that. Christians want to argue that. There are theologians, quote unquote, who want to say that the majority of the Old Testament is nothing more than stories designed to teach people. As if our Bible was written by the Grimm brothers. Okay? It's not. It's history. Okay? Subpoint 5. Last subpoint in point F. Subpoint 5. Scripture that specifically recognizes the authority relationship So scripture that specifically recognizes the authority relationship between the husband and the wife, and which commands the woman to assume the subordinate role includes Genesis 3:16, First Corinthians 11:3, Ephesians 5:22 through 24, Colossians 3:18, course, 1 Peter 3, 1 through 7. Subpoint G. Because God designed the right man or husband to have tremendous authority, tremendous responsibility, the tremendous responsibility. Start over again. Because God has designed the right man or husband to have the tremendous responsibility of providing for and protecting the right woman or wife and has given him absolute authority in the marriage relationship to go with that responsibility. He, it's capital H, this is God, he also designed and provided a basic protection from a tyrannical husband. So don't forget, husbands, yes, you have the ultimate responsibility. And you have the ultimate responsibility. Along with that, you have the ultimate authority. God gave you that authority so that you could fulfill that responsibility. But that doesn't allow you to be a tyrant, because you also are responsible to God. Okay? God is going to hold you accountable. And God does not like tyrants. Okay? So he's going to hold you accountable. But you have the responsibility, and you have the volition to function properly or improperly under that responsibility. That's the thing you should think of, wives or girls or young ladies, before you say yes, is the fact that your husband has ultimate responsibility, and he can exercise that responsibility, okay, for good or evil. Now, God will hold him accountable, but he can function in good or evil. And there's things that we have to understand, things that the state doesn't understand, because, you know, we talk about getting the state out of our bedroom, but that's only when we want it to, when we want to be malfunctioning. But we want the state to jump in where it shouldn't jump in yet again, when we want to protect the wife from the husband. The only protection the wife has from the husband is God. Okay? Now, the wife can leave. If a husband is an abusive husband, she has the right to leave. She doesn't have the right to remarry because she said, I do, to an animal. And the animal's beating on her. Okay? No woman should have to stick around to be beat on, to be a punching bag. She can leave. But she doesn't have the right of remarriage. Okay? We'll get into that a little bit later. But also things like the idea that a husband can rape his wife. The state wants to have that kind of law. The feminists want to bring that kind of law in because why? They don't like that authority of the husband. There is no such thing as rape in the marriage relationship. We studied that. The wife's body is the husband's, and the husband's body is the wife's. She can't rape him. He can't rape her. That's not part of it. So those are all things that, but the state will come in and say otherwise. See, that's another one of those things where the state got screwed up. Doesn't no longer follows the laws of divine establishment because of a misconception that all individuals are good and all mankind is good. And that's not true. So you have the concept that you got to have, everybody's got to be protected. That's not true. The husband is supposed to protect the wife. Okay, so God provided a basic protection from tyranny. Subpoint 1, this basic protection is part of the laws of divine establishment. And includes divine institution number 3, or family. So this basic protection is part of the laws of divine establishment and is divine institution number 3, or family. We're going to get here exactly what that means in a second, so bear with me for a second. But what it does not mean is it doesn't mean, oh, gee, my husband's a tyrant, therefore I'm going to make sure that I get pregnant and have a family so that he'll quit being a tyrant. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean having a family after the man is horrible. What we're going to see is it means that the man is supposed to be raised in a proper family. The man is supposed to be trained how to be a man by being in a proper family. See, we get what we reap what we sow. When we destroyed families, when we started destroying families in the 60s and 70s, and started trying to have the whole free love generation, and we don't need to have families, we destroyed for many generations the concept of family. Many of the kids that were kids in my generation, okay, and the one right after mine, didn't necessarily have an example of what a proper family should be. They weren't trained in family. And nowadays they're being trained in families that don't understand the laws of divine establishment. Families that have gone over to the liberal side of, gay marriage being okay, and everybody has their okay, and you have, like I said before, my daughter teaching, and she's got, 5th and 6th graders who are, transgender and gender fluid and all this, and their parents are all okay with it. That's the wrong influence of a family. God put a family together so that you would have properly functioning man married to a properly functioning woman, creating a properly functioning union, having a properly functioning family where they raise up the children in God's truths. Okay? So, number 1 was ended up with number 3, or family. Subpoint 2, the man who will eventually become a husband and have the absolute authority is, first of all, a little boy who is supposed to be loved and taught by his mother. So you can see the fall of the English Empire, okay, and the English nation, the British nation, the United Kingdom, as a priest nation, or client nation, excuse me, when part of it was when they started sending all of their boys to boarding school to be raised by somebody else. where the mother would have the child, and as soon as the child was born, would give it to a nanny until it got old enough to go into boarding school, and then put it in boarding school and never have anything else to do with it again. And then the child's relationship with his mother would be totally dysfunctional. You would have a better relationship with the nanny and the boys at the boarding school, which won't even get into that. Okay? And then you wonder why England fell as fast as they did. And we're doing the same thing here. We have women who've decided it's more important to go off to work instead of train their young men, their little boys, to become young men, and the young men to become husbands. Instead, it's more important for them to have money so that they can go get that second car or have the boat or have the cabin or have whatever it is that they want to have. Or even to make ends meet because they made stupid decisions before that. Okay? To the point where the young men, the boys, are not being trained to be men. They're not being trained by their mothers. The mothers have abdicated that responsibility, along with the fathers, who in many cases are absent, and it just perpetuates itself. Okay? So, first of all, a little boy who's supposed to be loved and taught by his mother. Subpoint 3. The mother is commanded biblically to teach her son including the concept of respect for womanhood. Which is a basic protection for the future wife, period. This respect must always be enforced by the father, period. When you have a young son, when you have a son, okay, as he's growing up, as a father, it is your responsibility to make sure that that son treats your wife, his mother, with respect. Because that is what trains him on how to treat his wife properly. The same thing, though, goes for the wife, for the mother. The mother is supposed to train her son, not to abuse her son, not to play mental games with her son, not to warp her son, make fun of her, ridicule, all those things that mothers who don't want to be mothers and end up pregnant and have kids sometimes do. The woman is supposed to take the job of training her son seriously. And the man is supposed to enforce that and make sure that the son that talks to his mother, that, God forbid, lashes out at all or strikes toward his mother, is taken care of quickly. He is punished quickly and severely and understands that he is never to treat a woman like that. He is never to treat his mother like that. That goes down to every single concept. Okay? Then you don't have the man that grows up and tries to beat his wife. He understands because he's understood what it took to function properly with his mother and what his mother has done for him. And so these women that talk about how, housewives and mothers are somehow less important than they are because they're a CEO of a multinational corporation are idiots. The job they have is nothing even comparable to absolute proper function in motherhood. It doesn't stop when the baby comes out. It starts. Okay. And many mothers will tell you it never ends until they either pass themselves or their kids pass before them. Okay. You know, I was chuckling the other day because my daughter-in-law, when my granddaughter was born, my daughter-in-law every month was putting together a little picture of my daughter as she grew, right? And she had a little sticker that had, every month, right? And I was teasing Melissa at one point right before my birthday. I said, I need to get a sign that says, so many, a couple thousand months for my age, because that's the way my mother still introduces me as her baby boy, right? This is my youngest son. Right? It's like, Mom, your youngest son's almost 60, okay? I think you probably don't have to have that youngest part of it anymore, okay? But that's motherhood, okay? So it has to be enforced by the father. Passages here. Proverbs 1, 8 through 9. And 6, 20 through 22. There's a lot more Proverbs than that, but those are ones we have received in the past. So I'll go ahead and give you, we're going to have Proverbs 1, 8 through 9. Verse 8. This is the first part of what's called an integral tetrastitch. Means it's going to go through several verses, actually. We have, hear, my son. This is an order that was originally given to Solomon by his father David. And by application, it's an order and an entreaty to all male children of the families going down through the end of human history. Okay? Hear, my son, the correctional instruction of your father, comma. And this is musar, which we saw many times when we were going through Proverbs. M long U, S long A, R. Musar. And musar means basically discipline, chastening, or chastisement. And when communication is the case, it means correctional instruction. It never just means the teaching or instruction. It means correctional instruction. It means sometimes that instruction comes with a smack along the side of the head. Okay? My family, punk, listen up. It's that correctional instruction. You're going to listen or your father will deal with you when you get home. One of those kinds of things. Only this is from the father, so the father's, you will listen to me now, or my belt comes off. Okay? One of those types of things. So here, my son, the correctional instruction of your father. We have Av here, which is father, A-B-H, Av. And the suffix makes the noun definite and refers to the male child, which again, originally here was Solomon. And then by application, it's all the children in his family and then all the children in all the families. Okay? We understand here that the father is responsible before God to provide the discipline and the correction in the correctional instruction to the child. The children are responsible before God to hear and obey. So the children have responsibility. They're not left with, as just little blobs of jello, right, that can go and do anything. They have responsibilities too. God gave them responsibilities. Listen up. Listen to the correctional instruction of your father. And fathers, use correction for that instruction. Oh, well, my son just never listens to me. No, make him. Make him. Did you hear that, son? Yeah. Whack. You want that? You want to try that again? Did you hear that, son? Yes, sir. Okay, much better. Okay. Yeah. So, of your father, and do not reject it. And do not reject. We have the while connective giving us the and we have Okie doke. Okay, batteries died. Sorry about that. We're almost done, but we'll go ahead and get verse 9 so we can get past this. Okay, so verse 8 again said, "Hear, my son, the correctional instruction of your father, and do not reject the authoritative direction of your mother, the law of your mother, because they are," and then underline, the next words are underlined, "a wreath of grace." That phrase is underlined, a wreath of grace around your head, comma. In the Hebrew, it literally says to your head, but the idea is around your head. Because they are a wreath of grace around your head, comma. You know what? I hate to stop there, but we're going to have to stop there because there's a couple points necessary to explain that phrase, a wreath of grace around your head. And so we're going to end up getting those points. And before we finish those points, we would be way out of time and we still wouldn't be able to finish the verse. So there's 3 subpoints underneath that, and then we'll finish the verse. Okay? But as you can see, the idea is that children are commanded by God, just like the parents are. The parents have a responsibility, and the children have responsibility as well. We'll see other verses as we go through, and we've seen other verses in the past that talk about having a life that is a long life by functioning properly with respect to your parents. Okay, and part of that was because you function properly. You're going to do the things that allow you to have that life in society. But the other side of it was when you didn't obey your parents, your life was shortened because you ended underneath a pile of rocks. Okay, so we'll leave it at that. Okay. And with that, we're going to go ahead and end with a song. And now I can shut my mic off.